Hello and welcome to AFL Podcasts, the home of objective, up-to-date and independent reporting on Turkey. Don't forget to follow our reports through social media, on aflnews.com or through our mobile app. Let's get started.
Hello, our listeners. Today we have Dr. Abdullah Aydoğan. Dr. Aydoğan is a research scholar at the Baker Institute for Public Policy at Rice University. And he is also a lecturer at Columbia University's Political Science Department. Welcome to the program, Abdullah.
Thank you so much. Welcome. Thank you.
We are going to talk about the local elections, and you just published today on Washington Post, April 9, very important analysis on the election. I'll let you talk about what you explained to American readers in Washington Post about the most recent elections.
So, just before that, I think it would be useful to go back to 2018 June election, and what the important point for that election was there was a huge mobilization behind opposition candidate Muharrem İnce, and the opposition had a huge hope on that election. But the key event happened. The key event was his performance on that election night. It was a very disappointing moment when he simply sent a text message to one TV anchor and saying the person won this election. And it was disappointing because at that moment people were still in the ballot boxes trying to secure the voting and the counting process. But what changed this time was there was no that type of a big mobilization during the local elections, but the Istanbul mayoral candidate Ekrem İmamoğlu was so successful that election night by conducting hourly press conferences and taking information from his own party network from each ballot and sharing the results with the audience, with his supporters and the press. I think he conducted for about 10 press conferences during that night until the morning. So this was a huge, I think, accomplishment. He did a great job, and remember there was 10 hours of pause on election result screening on that night in televisions in Turkey. So, but he was able to check and he was able to share what is the live results he is receiving. That was a critical moment, and he managed that night very well. And I think that's why we are at this stage right now, where Ekrem İmamoğlu is ahead in the elections for several thousands of votes. So I briefly mentioned how, in this piece, Ekrem İmamoğlu's performance brought us to this stage. And then I mentioned, although this is a huge accomplishment, we cannot claim this is an earthquake for the current ruling party or the current ruling coalition. This is because of the fact that in the previous local elections, the ruling party also lost some votes, but then eventually it recovered back. That is the key point, I guess. This is most probably because of the personalistic party of AKP. AKP is a very personalistic party. It's based on Erdoğan's image. So, and in local elections, Erdoğan is not able to put his name on each mayoral race. That's why this party almost always loses votes in local election while recovers back in the next election. So looking from this historical perspective, what I recommend is cautious optimism. So yes, there might be some beginning point for declining AKP, but let's look at the previous elections. Looking at them, I would recommend being more cautious. But this is a opposition, from an opposition perspective, this is what I would say. But I would also talk from an AKP perspective and say this is indeed an important opportunity. If the party thinks to use this opportunity, it's important opportunity, because AKP may try to change its image in the West, or if not West, at least the financial centers or the entrepreneurs who may want to invest in Turkey. So over the last few years, Turkish democracy collapsed. It is not anymore ranked as a democracy in most prestigious democracy ranking institutions. So this is a chance if Erdoğan, despite the importance of Istanbul and Ankara for its clientelistic and patronage networks, and despite the wealth of this whole city, if Erdoğan accepts this election, and if Erdoğan accepts the opposition victory, then it will mean something in terms of democratization. It will improve, at least to a certain extent, its democracy ranking. And then if this is followed by some improvements in rule of law and free market economics, I think this will be a huge help for Erdoğan's fight against the economic problems over the next few years.
So you are saying, let me jump into here. So you are saying that if Erdoğan accepts or concedes in Istanbul, this will help Turkey's image and democratic standing, and in the long term or mid-term, that will help Turkey's economy, and it will be good, obviously, for Erdoğan, since apparently there is no other election till 2023.
Yes, that's what I think. Yeah,
it's interesting. Why do you think then Erdoğan does not want to concede Istanbul now?
Well, that's a trade-off. On the one hand, you have all the patronage networks, all the clientelistic networks, all the money flowing to the pro-government contractors, businessmen through Istanbul municipality sources. But on the other hand, you have your renewed image in the eyes of entrepreneurs, foreign investors, and even IMF or World Bank, so that then you may need several economists. I'm not an economist, but economists are suggesting that Turkey will end up with IMF eventually. If this is the case, if this is what Erdoğan sees, I think this is a good strategy from their perspective. That's what I'm trying to say.
This is, I think, great point, really. I think this will make the headline here. Let's talk about, let me push back a little bit. So there are some respectable observers in Turkey, not only in the West, but also in Turkey, arguing that this is the end of the beginning, or beginning of the end for Erdoğan, because according to this argument, this time losing Istanbul and Ankara, or coming to 45%, 44% for ruling party, it is different than 2014. It's because economy is doing so badly, because its democracy is in shambles. In 2009 or 2014, Turkey appeared to be going up in the most of the indexes, whether in democracy, whether freedom indexes, whether in GTB wise and all that. But now it is going down almost every respect, and it doesn't appear like Turkey is going to do any kind of recovery. That is why Erdoğan's lose this time, people argue that might be the beginning of the end. Does it make sense to you?
Well, I'm not an economist, so I am not able to evaluate the economic indicators. And I am not able to predict at what point how Erdoğan can change or what type of resources he can find or what type of new coalitions he can do to turn this economic indicators up back. One obvious thing that I can say is investing on the rule of law, free market economics, and inviting new entrepreneurs. But there are also more authoritarian versions of fixing the economy. There are those options that I'm not much trained on. So if Erdoğan cannot find them, yes, that's right. This is definitely a decline, a beginning of a decline, and most probably in the next few years, Erdoğan's popularity will go down, further down. But going back to 2015 election and how Erdoğan kicked the peace process out and start fighting with the Kurds, having having stronger policies in the southeast. I was not expecting, although a political scientist, I was not expecting people to vote more heavily, more pro-Erdoğan after that stage. I mean, few months ago, he was negotiating. Now he's fighting. This was beyond my expectation, although it was voting behavior is type of my topic, research topic. I was not expecting this. So similarly, I simply hope Erdoğan cannot find that type of new authoritarian tactics, even to fix the economy, finding new foreign allies, or getting some different external funds to fix the economy. I simply assume he cannot find that. That's my point. So since it's beyond my expertise, I'm not able to talk more about that.
I understand. Let me ask my final question. In Southeast, so Erdoğan's party picked up quite a few new cities there, and since it is Southeast, and since Erdoğan's policy towards the Kurds, whether in Syria or even the Kurdistan regional government in northern Iraq or the Southeast, appear to be, hostile, if I may say, although obviously President Erdoğan and his party would not agree with this. Their approach is that they're against the PKK and the terrorists. How do you think Erdoğan's party is still able to pick up few more cities in Southeast? How it's possible?
Well, it's to me, it's more about the security of voting and counting process. If a party is consistently punishing or taking into jail, if a party is persecuting the ballot box observers in this region of a Kurdish party, then I cannot be sure that there was a fair voting in that region. And there were several incidences that was shared in the news, in the local news, in the national news, in social media. Those images are showing there was huge question on the fairness of the election in the Southeast. And well, if a party is increasing its votes simply, if a nationalist party is increasing its votes only in the Southeast and decreasing the votes in the rest, it is a big question mark. This is something political scientists hardly explain using regular ideological or policy shifts of a voter or a party.
I understand. Thank you so much for coming on. And Abdullah Aydoğan today with us, and we talk about his most recent piece on Washington Post and on the local election was held on March 31st. And Abdullah Aydoğan says it's too early to call this election, results of the election, as a political earthquake for Erdoğan. I said that was my final, but if Istanbul, there is a Istanbul rerun election, quickly and briefly, what would you say the opposition chance that time? Would İmamoğlu win again?
Well, definitely there's a chance still after seeing what we observed, but we should also think again, historically, Turkey experienced 2015 June and 2015 November elections, and how Erdoğan was aggressive and how people voted for him. And then also there was, of course, some election irregularity allegations in the November election. But there is this chance Erdoğan can use similar tactics and to be able to get this race back again. This is one thing that needs to be considered. But if it really goes to an election, what I would think is boycotting is not something I would recommend, but what I would recommend is, as an instrument, boycotting needs to be used. That's my point for several months. I keep saying, if you're a party that has minimum sources in the media, in terms of money and in terms of outreaching people, you should be use this as an instrument. Eventually, you may fail to do it. You may choose not to boycott it, but you should be vocal and you should say that this is one of our options. If you are not guaranteeing us certain things, then we will not be in this race. For example, one point can be asking international observers and asking more appearance in the media, or asking more resources or more egalitarian resources. So you can push this as just one instrument, as just one way to push AKP to get more resources out of this race. Otherwise, you may say we will not be in this race if these are not guaranteed. Again, eventually boycotting is not something I recommend, but as an instrument, boycotting should definitely be on the table.
Got it. Thank you so much, Abdullah, and hopefully to talk again in the future about the elections and election results. Thanks so much.
Thank you.